Right, for everybody who speaks today on the Meet Echo and in the room, please be aware that we have a number of Meet Echo, or we have a number of remote attendees and some presenters, so please speak clearly and slowly and say your name at the mic. And for Meet Echo people, please also speak clearly and slowly. It should be, the Meet Echo seems to be responding pretty well, but please still be wary of that. Everybody should, oh, hello, is this cut off? Sorry about that. Thanks. Everybody should be aware of the note well. I'm displaying it on the screen just in case. And here is our agenda for today. So we've gone through the quick preliminaries, we've set up our scribes and such and looked at the note well. I've moved the agenda around a little bit today, mostly because Gunnar's presentation nicely flows through the ETSI statement onto the open issues. So we'll go through the SLIM new and existing documents before we talk about the ETSI statement, which should be pretty quick. We then need to talk about our main open issue and any other open issues that people want to raise. And then we'll go ahead and have some AOB afterwards, where we try and talk about completing the work and the set of things we want to do for the next month. Any agenda bashing from the group? Okay, cool. Excellent. All right. So let's go ahead then and talk about the documents. Just for people in the room, I will show you, we have 3 documents in SLIM, draft IETF SLIM multi-lang content, draft IETF SLIM negotiating human language, and the SLIM use cases, which I updated today. So to begin, if it's okay with Nick, we are going to go through the updates to the multilingual content type. We are going to try and use Meet Echo to get Nick talking. So I assume I
am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you, but have you got a webcam turned on?
No, it's not.
Okay, that's fine. Then we don't need to. So I'm just at the beginning of your slide deck. Just tell me when you want me to progress.
Okay, will do. Okay, so just a bit of a background for the document. The objective is to allow multiple translations of the same message to be sent in the same email, and to enable the end users to identify and select which language to send based on the user's language preference.
Oh, Nick, just speak a little bit closer to your mic. There's sometimes you're fading in and out a little bit.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, so we're going to achieve it using a new multi-part type called multi-part multilingual, and we're going to use language tags that are inside the message to identify which part is which. The next slide, please.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so for the recent activity, at the end of the last meeting, Pete Resnick suggested that the inner parts of the email should be message/RFC822. This was mainly to make sure that the individual language-specific subjects are recognized by legacy clients. And I think that's a great idea, and I've been doing some testing with some emails in that format, and they do produce some pretty good results. And straight after his suggestion, Sean Leonard suggested that message/global would be better than message/RFC822 due to its support for UTF-8 in message bodies. And this is another really good suggestion. I've also done some testing with that, with emails in that format, but the results aren't quite as good. And I'm certain that this is due to the lack of support for message/global in email clients that I've tried. And also from looking around, I haven't really found much support for message/global, so I don't really know whether that's going to cause a big problem at the moment or not. And that's going to be the big next question: how do we get wider support for message/global? So I'd definitely prefer to use message/global rather than message/RFC822 because it seems like exactly the right choice for what we want to do. And I think once we get better support for message/global, the results will end up much more like what we're seeing for message/RFC822 for legacy clients, and that's as good as we're going to get for legacy clients anyway. The only other issue that I can see at the moment with message/global is that the inner message part could be given a different sender address to that of the header field, and potentially you could get some spoofing or impersonation issues because the email might look like it's been sent from someone that hasn't been sent from. So I will need to add that into the security considerations section. I also want to do some further testing with a wider set of user agents, so I will need some volunteers for that. So I'm going to put a message on the SLIM list to try to get some people to volunteer for that. That'd be really good. All that is really is to receive some handcrafted multi-part, multilingual emails from me and feedback about how the results look.
Nick, do you want Alexi? You on the queue? Sort of. Okay. Shall I let Nick continue, or do you want to ask a question now?
Okay. I think realistically we'll probably need to support both message RFC822 and message global in short term, and we can, I think, especially if we want interop with existing email clients, so at least clients that can gracefully degrade, that don't understand multi-part multilingual, but they can still interpret it somewhat reasonable way. So I suppose at some point we can discuss whether it's like must support message RFC822, must should support message global or something like that. But
okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. Right. Well, also, one of the comments from the last meeting, John Levine noted how the security considerations was lacking, which I kind of knew about. I didn't really know what to put there at that stage, and I hadn't put a lot of time into it. But he identified a possible issue with spam filters allowing through undesirable content if those spam filters don't check all of the inner parts. So what I've done is I've rewritten that section, the security considerations, and I will submit that as part of the new version of the draft fairly soon. Also, the last comment we had was from Randall Jones. He highlighted that there might be a requirement for more than one language independent image. I think that's going to be helped by the use of either message/RFC822 or message/global as the language message parts, because inside those there could be multi-part mixed, so of course it could have more than one part to it, so more than one image. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So this is a bit of a summary almost of what I've just said, but what's left to do, there's more testing that I want to do with message/global to get a better, wider picture of how well it's supported. So I need some volunteers on the SLIM list, but like I said, I'll send a message out on there. I need to rewrite the document with either message/global or message/RFC822 or a combination of the two, as Alexi just mentioned. So I'll have to do that, and then that will include the new security considerations that mention the spam filters concern, and also the impersonation concern with using those two new inner types. And all the discussion will be on that normal SLIM working group. So we can get a really good thing going there. And that's it from me. So any questions?
Great, thank you. Any questions for Nick in the room or on the from the remote attendees? Okay, there's one remote one. I get to do my pressing the red button. Paul, hold on. Right, there you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
If you want to test this, how about just sending some mails in this format to our mailing list?
Yeah, I did consider that. I thought that maybe the agent behind the list might do some weird things to it. So I was hoping to send them directly to lots of different types of end user client directly.
That would be a good test in any case.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Any more questions from people in the room or on the line? All right, Nick, thank you so much for this work. That's fantastic. Please do take the things that you suggested to the list so that we can talk and get some people helping you out on some of those bits and pieces to finish things off. Okay. Just quickly, any indication on how long it's going to take you to get some of the for the updates to get done? Do you have a time in mind?
Not really. It could be maybe a month, just to get feedback from all the different types of user clients and then rework it. It may be shorter than that if we get some good focus on it.
Okay, great. That's good to know. So, I mean, I mean, by the time that we all recover from this, it's going to be mid-April. So perhaps by the mid-May or end of May, it might be a good thing to target for about that time. Cool. Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much. Brilliant.
Thank you.
So we'll move on from there. Thanks, Nick. Cool. So Randall, do we want to go ahead and do your updates? You do. You just want to talk through them, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is Randall Gallons. There's not really anything to say about the update. The only changes are some minor wording clarifications and things like that. There were some email comments with a lot of requested changes, and I made changes that were that did not add technical complexity to the document. So I just basically added some clarifications, mostly about the interpretation of the existing Lang attribute in SDP. But I declined to make the changes which requested that we add Q values and absolute preferences among modalities and that sort of thing, because I remain unconvinced that we need to do that. And my experience over many years has been that the more things we add, the harder it is to get deployment. And particularly if we, something like this, it's fairly simple. If we end up needing something in the future, it should be very easy to add it, as long as we keep things pretty clean now. Yeah. So I would really like to not add things to it.
Okay, cool. We have a big session at the end to talk about the updated issues, but and aside from that particular point, anything else that you wanted to add about the draft?
That's really about it. There's some disagreement between Gunnar and myself over how to interpret the wording for the existing Lang attribute. So Gunnar seems to feel that the intent all along for that attribute is that it can be used for negotiation, whereas my reading of the words is that it can't. And obviously the wording for the existing attribute is extremely vague. So okay.
All right,
that's
cool.
About it.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. We'll get to some of the more finer points of that in the ending session. But cool, awesome, thanks. Brilliant. And to go back to our list, the last thing that we have is the SLIM use cases. I was very, very cheeky with the SLIM use cases document. I did send it in before the deadline, and then I updated it today. Just with some cleanup, because I was using ID template on from Martin Thompson's GitHub repo, and I didn't know how to do a few things, like make proper references, which now the document has. So so that's one of the additions. You'll find that the SLIM use cases now has proper references. It also goes into a little bit more of sort of easy to understand use cases or examples for the use cases rather than just an explanation of them. It would be worth somebody taking a read through of it. It's not it's not going to be an RFC document, obviously. So it just have a quick look through them and make it, let me know if you have any suggested changes. All of the use cases are the same. They just have this extra bit of text, which makes them a little bit easier to understand. And then you can see just at the bottom there, the references actually in that. Cool. So any questions about the documents, use cases, or Randall's doc?
Chris Newman, did you want to explicitly call for volunteers to read through this, or did you want to wait and do that on the list?
I think I'm happy to go ahead and do that on the list. That's absolutely fine. Thank you for bringing that up, though. Yeah, are you volunteering, Chris?
Considering that Chris might not have time this week.
Do you know, it's such a short document. You can actually sit there, write notes, and read it, and be present at this meeting all at the same time. So that would be great. I was falling asleep and writing notes at the previous meetings. No, it's yeah. On the list is fine. If you do have time this week, though, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much, Randall.
I just want to point out, I did send an email with some comments with suggested changes to the use cases.
Brilliant, thank you.
So basically, from reading through the use cases, there were a few things, but my main point of disagreement was that I did not feel that the absolute preference was needed in order to accomplish them.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, as you know, my
them.
knowledge isn't so much in this area, so it's good to have that input. Thanks. Cool. All right, I'll address those when I get to see the email. Any other questions? People on the phone? No. Nobody else in the room. Cool. All right. Let's move on. Gunnar, you're up. We're going to go through the ETSI statement and then the open issues that you've listed in your document as well. So, Gunnar, are you on the line? Oh, hello.
Yes, I am. Hi.
Oh, hi. So just tell me when you want me to progress the slides.
Yeah, can you show the slides?
Yeah, they're up right now. I don't know what you can see actually. What can you just see? You can see me.
I saw next slides, but I still have last slide up here.
Oh, really?
Yep. Why?
It's definitely mine. It's definitely yours that was showing right now. What can you see? A video of the...
Now I see Mechu, and now I see nothing. So maybe it's coming.
Can everybody else see the slides?
Paul says he can.
Yeah, I think it might be your side, Gunnar, for whatever reason.
Okay, if you tell me which one is up, I can...
Okay, that's good. So I'm on your title slide at the moment.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the real-time aspects, and the next slide, please, is about
the ETSI
references. ETSI MTEL sent a liaison, I think it ended up in SLIM for one of the previous meetings. It was about a work we had in ETSI with total conversation for emergency communication, and that work is now completed. So there is now a technical report 10321, total conversation for emergency communication implementation guidelines, and it's published, and you have a link there. And the completion and use of SLIM, the human-lang attributes, are reported there to be important for successful support of persons with different language and modality needs in emergency services in Europe. So, and the document, the ETSI document, is just a report about how we can establish good emergency service communication. And we see this the completion of this work as an important part of it. And by that, I recommend that for reading and see how we suggest to use SLIM output. And next slide, please.
Cool. Use cases to support.
Yeah, we have this good little document about use cases, and I would like to seek agreement that we really intend to fulfill the use cases. So this is just the go through of them. So the goal should be support of all use cases except the speech-to-speech service user, because that is a service request rather than a language use request. We have first a single two-way language in the same modality, which is very simple. You want to talk and listen in the same language. We have another where when you offer alternative languages in the same modality, you say you can use either Spanish or English, and doesn't matter. Then we come into more complicated, fairly equal favored alternatives in different modalities. For example, I can talk and hear Russian, but I can also sign Russian Sign Language. Select what you want. And number 4 is a last resort alternative. I really prefer to use speech, but I can accept, if you can't, I can accept to type in. And
Gunnar.
number 5.
Oh,
Yep.
Gunnar, Bernard wants to know if the Etsy is referencing use cases, do we need to publish a use case document?
Good question. No, we are not referencing these use cases. We have our own use cases of what, or usage. I'm not sure that we have. Yeah, we have the user types, signing persons, typing persons, and hearing persons. So I don't think that our document requires, we don't refer to the use cases document. No, we say that interesting work is going on in SLIM, and we hope that that will complete so that it can be used in Europe. We were going into number 5, the directional capabilities in the same direction but different modalities. For example, I need both to hear spoken English and read written English at the same time, because I'm hard of hearing. I can take some from hearing but need a complementing text. Another, number 6, is another directional capabilities. It's when you have directional in different directions and different modalities. For example, I want to speak Norwegian, but I don't hear, so I want to read Norwegian text. And number 7, multi-language competence in different modalities offered from the caller. For example, a multilingual call center calling out and offering a lot of different languages and modalities, and the answering part can see that and select whatever they want. And the last, speech that is weak or hard to understand because of a disability. I cannot see any way to express that language preference or capability that you need someone to listen in and help you to express yourself if you cannot do it yourself. That is a clear service need instead of a language preference. So I don't see how that can be coded. If we look through what we have in the current UMINT draft, we see that some of these are not well covered. And I sent a mail today about it, what to do about it. And I see that one thing that is needed is a grouping agreement, and another is a priority indication that is valid all through the SDP.
Cool.
Shall we have any questions on this? Well, I'll return to the same topic later on. So what's your suggestion?
No, I mean, this slide is obviously going ahead into starting to talk about the issue that we had that Randall was talking about previously. You know, realistically, it would be good if we could clear this up in this meeting so that we can move forward from that. I don't have much understanding of the technology in this area, although it seems that there is there's a couple of things here. One, that it might be, or sort of implementation deployment of doing this kind of thing would be very difficult and not very. It's not recommended to go ahead and do that, or that it's maybe not necessary. So I don't know whether that, so it'll be good if we could clear that up and then perhaps move on. We've got Brian on the queue in the room.
Yeah. So
we have.
Oh, sorry, Brian's on the queue first.
So
Yep.
We've done a number of grouping mechanisms in various ways. There's several in SDP, and we've done other kinds of things. They're complicated. They tend not to be implemented. They don't seem to help as much as we thought they would. And I'm very suspicious of any new grouping mechanism. I just don't think, having tried to get people to implement it, having done some implementations myself and have been involved in several standards efforts on grouping, it always looks so simple and always ends up being hard.
Okay. Yeah, I see in the others and agree. They look complicated and scarce from implementation.
This is Randall Gallons. I just wanted to reiterate what Brian said and what I said earlier, which is that in my view, the simpler we keep this document, the better we are able to, number one, get it deployed quickly. And then number two, we can learn from that deployment and we can extend it if we need to. And that extension will be based on real needs. And therefore, we can do it in a way that makes sense and will also get implemented if it's needed.
Cool. Thank you for that. That was going to be one of the suggestions. Is to make something extensible. Gunnar, you have a couple more slides, so I suggest that you go through those slides now. I'm also just going to say, because we have a few people in the room, we also have a few people remote attending. I know it's difficult because remote attendee people can't participate in humming, and obviously that's supposed to be a sort of anonymous vote. So if you feel that you don't mind making your opinion known on this topic, it would be good if you could, the remote attendees, put something in the Jabber room to say, you know, how you feel about this, because we do want to try and resolve this today. So Gunnar, I'll go through to your next slide, the current lang attribute.
Yeah, I see the slides now, in fact, but I take them. So, but now I can't operate my screen. Let's see here. Well, the current lang attribute that's one issue in the current draft, that it has a questionable interpretation of the use of the lang attribute. It claims that all languages declared by the lang shall be used in the session, and I think that is obvious that that cannot be the meaning. It is not realistic. The intention in a conversational call must be that the languages are offered for selection in an offer-answer method.
If you go by the simple meaning of the words, I would disagree that it's impossible. and that can't be, because my reading of it is that that's exactly what it means, because that's exactly what it says. That may not be what they meant, I don't know, but my interpretation is that the intent was that this is used not for real time, but for static media, where there are multiple languages in there, and that would be a useful thing to label them. Now that, I could be wrong, you could be wrong, I really don't know, but the point is, it's very vague, it doesn't seem to be usable for our purposes, so I don't really see the point of continuing to debate the meaning of the words in a different RFC.
No, that is my conclusion, that we should move this discussion to M-Music, but conclude it there and get it understood that it is for selection, and it cannot have been meant for that you must use all. I have some evidence here, number 1 and 2.
Back in the 2 previous Orlando meetings ago, so what was that, 5 years, 6 years? We had a face-to-face where we discussed this very issue, because the idea was, how are we going to get this thing, how are we going to get the ability to negotiate human language? And we all agreed that we could not use the existing attribute because it did not seem to be what we needed. And if we, in fact, one option was that we said, let's just redeclare the semantics of it to be what we want, which is that you can use it in negotiation, in which case this whole draft goes away and we're done. And when this group does not need to do anything.
It needs to be done for the use cases, the complex use cases. But you're right. The other use cases are solved by the lang attribute.
Cool. I just need to make everyone aware that, we've got 20 minutes left. So, yeah, Gunnar, go through your slides a little bit quicker.
Yep, I will. The first evidence that it is possible is that it says that the order of attributes indicate the order of importance. If you really say that all must be used, then the order of importance is of no meaning.
Okay, cool. We do have a couple of people on the queue. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. We have a couple of people on the queue. Are you? Were you going to ask?
I'm just gonna. I'm echoing from Bernard from the room. Can't order of importance also be applied to new attributes? Does that provide any value without the complexity of grouping?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that order of importance does have meaning for static media, because if you're thinking of watching a particular news clip and it's got several languages in there and there's some of them you don't understand, if they're the languages at the end, you might watch it anyway because it's not that important if you don't get it.
I just got some people on the virtual queue as well. Bernard is up first. I'm not too sure if you're going to repeat what you said with thingy, but we'll put you at here. Bernard, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think Randall expressed it more or less. It was more of a question to Gunnar. There was a sentiment that grouping is too complex, and I agree with that. I'm just wondering if we can use, in Gunnar's opinion, whether order of importance has any value. And we can get through some of his use cases without the grouping.
I need to recheck the use cases. I don't think so.
Okay.
We have cases where you really must have both media and modalities. But okay, evidence too that this is.
Sorry.
Well, it's very unusual that you have more than one language in the same modality in a media. So why would they describe it as you always must use all media? And for example, also it says in the beginning that the intention is to settle a default language. So clearly it's selection for offer answer. So therefore I suggest that we change the wording and say that it is possible, but we have use
We have-
cases that are
I love how you
complex,
keep
more
saying
complex.
that clearly the words mean something when it's not clear that that's what they mean.
Okay, we do have Paul on the queue, on the virtual queue as well. Paul, you should be able to be heard in the room now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that isn't known for sure here. But I mean, this is a really ancient attribute. My suspicion is it's been there since the time of SAP, before SIP. And if so, it must have originally been designed for use in a declarative sense. So, then there aren't any particular offer-answer rules around it that I'm aware of. So, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Go
right.
ahead,
It's very, very old, and I discussed with the creator and just got advice to go to RFC 4566 BIS, and so there it is sorted out to be a selection. Okay, we can go on to next slide.
Can I?
Brian's
This is Brian. So,
Oh.
I would really like us to try to separate requirements from mechanisms. If we decide we have a requirement to do some of these more complex cases, then we need a solution, and we can choose what solution we need. The history of this work, we have gone back and forth in lots of ways of how to do things, and mechanism has always been fraught with difficulty. So but I plead that we don't mix mechanism with requirements. If we have a requirement to do something and the current proposed mechanism doesn't do it, we'll have to fix that in one way or another. But let's not get going on that whole thing of how to do something until we decide that we need to do something, because I don't think we need to do more than we've done. Gunnar is arguing otherwise. So I'd like to settle that question first before we argue about what mechanism we use to accomplish some requirement that we don't yet agree on.
So is what you're saying that what we have at the moment is acceptable for the use cases that we have?
Well, we're going to have to be careful about what use cases imply and how exactly the wording on some of these use cases go on. So I don't think we're done yet with the use cases.
That's fair.
But we are indeed implying requirements that I don't think exist yet.
Okay.
And in order to make sure it's not a requirement, I might want to make a change to the use cases. But right at the moment, I don't think we have to do that. But he's interpreting things a different way than I am, and so maybe we do.
Okay, so that sounds like there is some changes that need to go to the use case document, which Randall's already sent in, and Brian, you said that you might send something in.
I'm going to go look again and see whether my interpretation of what the use cases things jive with what he thinks.
It's great. It would be greatly received because, like, I put that together very loosely. Cool. All right. Yeah, Gunnar, please finish up a little bit quickly and then finish this.
Next slide is the real kernel of the issues. Can you show it, or have you shown it already?
Yep.
No?
Grouping and preferences across media lines.
Uh-oh. I don't see that again. I need to see if I can get my... Yeah, these are the real technical issues for satisfying the use cases to have grouping and preferences that are valid across media lines. So we need a priority indication that is not bound to just M line, but has relation all over the SDP. And we need an indication that two languages and modalities are required together. For example, a need to both hear voice and get text, or need to talk and get text back. And we need to be also more clear than RFC 4566, the lang attribute about offer answer selection and required grouping, so that we don't fall in the same category as the current lang, that it's not usable because we don't understand it. I have proposed a solution in a mail, in a couple of mails before, but I collected them again and touched them up today. And my proposal, because I have no other, is a Q value per language attribute with a whole SDP as scope, and an extra role saying that if you have the same Q value, it means that it is a required grouping, so that it's a very simple grouping mechanism. So if one of these are selected, all shall be used. And next slide is just the end.
Cool, thank you. So let me leave it on this slide for a moment. So people in the room and on the phone, what are the parts of this slide that people do or do not agree with? People are reading in the room. I have a sneaky suspicion, but
That's right. I don't think that we need to do things that involve grouping. I don't think that the complexity, I understand what the cleverness that gets us is. I don't think that it has enough practical value to actually result to benefit from the complexity that it introduces. And I particularly don't like the solution, but I'm trying to avoid talking about the solution and talk about the requirement. Do we have a requirement to group? I don't think we do. I think that we can handle the cases, the majority of cases of interest with much simpler mechanisms that don't involve grouping. And I prefer to concentrate on those things, especially as our first step. We can always go back and fix things if we decide, it really is important to know the difference between I can speak French and I can sign Russian, but I'd prefer to, wave my hands. I mean, yeah, we can't do that, but I don't think we have to.
Okay, so I've been hearing this from a lot of people. I'm not too sure if there's I don't think I ejected Paul from the queue, so I'm not too sure if there's anyone else on the remote queue. Gunnar, Randall, you mentioned earlier about the idea of maybe extending the work later on. Is that something that can happen to suit these other use cases at a later date?
Absolutely. I mean, let's say we get this document done, in 3 months. We go through, everything is published as an RFC in a couple of months this year. We get some deployment experience. And it turns out there's some common use case or some important use case where we really do need grouping or priority. We can then just go in and add an extension RFC that just adds, if it's a Q value, whatever it is, and we can just say it adds that, and then that's it.
Okay, cool. Brian, you've got.
So I'm here wearing two hats. My first hat is the Jabber Scribe, and Bernard says, question to Brian, what is your thinking on alternatives to grouping ordering? And now I put my own hat on, and Brian Rosen's at the mic, and he says, I don't think we need either. I think just the basic SDP offer answer is sufficient to solve the majority of the problems. So I don't think we need either order or grouping.
Okay, so just to add to that, I come from a software engineering background, and I tend to find this solving those smaller problems first tends to prove to be more successful generally. So I too, not with the chair's hat on, feel that solving the simpler problems first might be a good way to move forward. I feel like solving the simpler problems first and then having this extensibility is the way to keep everybody happy here. Because we're not saying we're not doing the use cases. Maybe I shouldn't use the word keeping everyone happy.
No.
Wait, I can see you smiling, so it's not that bad.
I'm so used to it. But no, it doesn't keep me happy. I think we have condensed the use cases to a very small number, and we don't solve them with the current wording. We need these mechanisms, some way to do grouping and prioritizing over M lines.
We do have to address the use cases document, and that mostly is because somebody who didn't have a really good in-depth understanding of this technology, i.e. me, wrote it. So there is some bits that need to go into, but we aren't throwing away the use cases. We will go ahead and address them as part of this extension once we've got this little bit done beforehand.
No, we can't. We need, need everything from the beginning.
Why can we not do that? That seems like a good route forward.
Because the simple use cases can be done with the current lang attribute, and it is the combinations that are shown in the other use cases that motivate this work. And if we don't fulfill the use cases, it's of no value. It doesn't do more than the lang attribute.
Okay, so my understanding is that we can extend later, possibly with this Q value, to go ahead and do those.
It doesn't need to be exactly the Q value. I agree with Brian that we should separate requirements and how it's done. I tried with a simple high, mid, and low priority, but I found that it was I didn't want to introduce new priority mechanism, so I returned to the old method of Q value. But anyone can propose a simpler mechanism, but it is needed. I definitely want to have the possibility to say that I strongly prefer to talk, but I can accept to type if really needed. So that is the kind of things you need the priority for.
Yeah, Bernard might be able to provide some information.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a few questions, one of which is, do we have a way of coming to consensus on which use cases are required and which are optional? And the second question is, if once we decide which ones are required, do we have a way of coming to consensus on whether we actually solve them with what we have or with some, extension or other? I think between those two things, if we could do those things, we might be able to have a way forward. That make any sense?
Yeah, I think this makes sense. So I guess one good suggestion from that comment is to take the suggestions for changes from the use cases from the group. So Randall sent some in already. Brian's going to send some in. We can have please everybody else on. I'll send a message to the list as well, and please everybody have a look at those use cases, and we can get those working, and then off of those agreed sets, we could then see if the solutions that we have address those. And it seems at the moment people are keen more on that a simpler approach with an extension afterwards. But yeah, use cases agreement is.
And also maybe in the document have a additional thing on whether the use case is required or optional. Because there might be some that we decide we can't do, but we don't care, or it's not required for right now.
Okay,
yeah, understood.
May I comment one thing that Randall usually says? Randall usually says that what we have is sufficient for selecting which media we enable. And I usually comment that that is not what we are working for. We are working for telling the counterparts what language they shall use. They may have all media included, and it's better the more media they include in the call, but it's how they intend to behave in the call that is we are agreeing on here. So
I want to point out, this is Brian, I want to point out that as I recall, in the list discussions that we have had and the room discussions that we have had, Gunnar has been the only person who's been wanting to have these more complex cases required. I'm never worried too much about options. If people want to go beyond options, it's all right with me. But I'm going to ask the chairs to try and figure out an early opportunity to determine if we have rough consensus. Let me say that. Might want to wait till a little lists rather than the room. You could do it in the room just to see what happened, but you'll have to take it to the list anyways, and we don't have very many people in the room, which is why I suggest that maybe doing it in the list might be the ring. But the earlier we understand whether we have rough consensus on this sort of fundamental issue of do we need something more complex than sort of basic SDP with a way of saying a language on any media stream, is that enough or not? If we have rough consensus on that, then we're wasting a lot of time. If we don't, we have to work harder to determine if we have rough consensus.
Good point. Thank you. Randall?
This is Randall Gallons. I obviously want to second that that proposition by Brian. I also just wanted to point out what I've been saying all along is that what we have enables selection of language per media. And if you end up with more media than you need, the world doesn't end. It's a little bit wasteful, but the point is the communication happens. And that's important because there's a difference between humans doing something and being able to express everything that humans can do in a technical way. And I don't think we need to express everything that humans could possibly do in a technical way. I think it's sufficient if we can get the media with an agreement of the languages. We have really achieved a lot, and I think that we have that. And if you end up with an extra media stream in there, you don't have to use it. Also, I just wanted to point out the original definition, and this is, we've been going round and around on this, but the original in RFC 4566, it says that the lang attribute, it says that you can use multiple lang attributes at the media level when the media use multiple languages. So therefore, in my reading, it's very, very simple that means the media is using multiple languages, meaning more than one. If it was only using one, you wouldn't be using multiple, and that's not what we need.
Okay. We only have 1 minute left on the...
I just want to say, otherwise we would have been done 5 or 6 years ago.
I know. Then you never would have had this experience of having me as a chair. Wouldn't that be lost? What can I say? Bernard, you're still on the queue. Do you want to say anything before?
Just that I thought Randall made a very important point, which is to understand whether extraneous media is a problem or not. If it's not a problem, I think it does simplify things. So that might be an issue that we could try to get consensus on.
Okay, cool.
I said the same thing. More media is good, but the intention of all this work is to have the humans to agree on what they are doing and also put in the right persons or right services.
Yeah, but people can switch from one media to another. It's not necessarily an issue if I have more. If you see what I'm saying, the priority of the media that I accept can be determined in the conversation itself.
I don't want to close media because of this. I just want persons to be able to start the conversation properly and have the right people in them.
Okay, we are going to have to finish up. I'm going to make a suggestion for something that we should do for moving forward. Let me just allow Paul to speak because I'm not too sure how long he was on the queue for. So Paul, you're our last commenter.
Hi. Just a small point, but it seems to me, I think what Gunnar's getting at is that, in addition to getting the right media in the call, there's the question of getting the right resources in the call. And in particular, having enough information to decide if you need an interpreter or if you can do without one.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
That is the point. We intend to use this for pulling in relay services. And the
Brian,
right relay service.
Last point, Brian.
Okay. That is not properly a signaling problem.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, so I'll summarize things that we could do from now on and a little bit of work that we can do between now and the next IETF meeting. First of all, we clean up the use cases document. There seems to be a thing that everybody feels is something that needs to happen, and we can add this other things about the priorities attached to those use cases as well, as suggested by Bernard. The next thing that we could do is have this discussion about the rough consensus, as which Brian alluded to earlier, whether we have rough consensus on the situation as it is now. If people are happy with that, then we can go ahead and start to publish the drafts that we have as they are, with the ability to possibly extend later to take account for those other use cases if they're not fitting in with the situation as it is right now, once we clarify with the Lang attributes. We have gone back and forth on this particular issue since the last IETF, and it was a long time ago, the last one. I know there was Christmas in the way, but it was a long time ago. So ideally, we would like to get these first round of drafts, Nick's and Randall's draft, done by the next IETF meeting, so that we can go ahead and look at those extensions if they are necessary once we decide that they're necessary on the list. This is going to require our group to be actively working on this from now, not a month before the next meeting, which I know is also my fault. Let's go with that for now. If you feel differently about that, either see me if you're here. If not, please send an email to the list, preferable to me personally. If you don't feel so happy with that, please copy Bernard as well, because he's also a co-chair, and we will go from there. Thank you everyone to you who presented. I'm putting slides together at very short notice. Let's work to get things all sorted and move things forward. So cool. Thank you everyone. You're free to go.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Yep, thank you. Please sign blue sheets if you haven't already.